I want to define some of these terms because as a new founder, this can be very confusing. And you already mentioned a couple of things. You talked about common stock or restricted common stock. You've talked about stock options. What's the difference, and how do we sort of assign who gets what?
Yeah. So the who gets what depends on the timing, right?
Right.
So think of it this way, that let's say you and I start working together on a startup, and we've been working together from day one. We incorporate the company. There is literally no value in the company, right? I mean, we're working with an idea, but the idea is
Right.
what's the value in
You
an
start
idea,
at zero.
right? So on day one we split the equity, whichever way we do, right? There is zero value in those shares, right? We in Delaware corporations, you always have a par value, and we end up using par value to actually give par value as the actual value of the shares to give issue equity to the founders. Now think of it this way. Two of us, we split the equity, we issued ourselves common stock. Now we have to think about, hey, what happens if Azad tomorrow he loses interest in the venture, right? Or he finds a job somewhere else and he moves. And we've split 60-40. So should Azad, if he was given 40% and he works with you for a few months and then he leaves, should he be able to walk away with the 40% of the company, and you will continue to work on it, but he is not really contributing, but he has 40% of the company. So
Right.
that's where we the concept of vesting comes in, right? Initially, that's
Mm-hmm.
so that's one of the restrictions on the common stock, is that the shares that are issued to the founders or the co-founders will vest over a period of time, and they are subject to the company's right of repurchase, so that if you leave, then the company can buy back the invested shares. That's one restriction on the shares, and that's the reason why common stock, when it's issued to the founders, it's called restricted common stock. It's the same common stock, but it's called restricted stock. Why? Because there are certain restrictions. You can sell those shares. There's a right of repurchase. There's a right of first refusal the company has. So there are those set of restrictions on those common stock, and hence it's called restricted common stock.
Got it.
Now, the question is, should you be giving restricted common stock or options? Well, there are tax consequences. So if, like I said, if we started a company together and from day one we split the equity, then there's no value. So it can be common stock. Now think of the scenario where you were the sole founder, and you worked on your idea, and you've been able to bring it up to a level where there's some value in the company. I come along 6 months, a year later, and let's say the company's value, for just for the sake of argument, we say it's $100,000 is the value of the company. Right. Now, when you give me 40% on that date, then I'm getting $40,000 worth of shares, right? The company's value is $100,000. I'm getting $40,000 worth of shares. Now, the IRS is going to say, Azad, you got $100,000 worth of shares for your services as a co-founder, and hence we are going to tax you.
Oh, okay.
Right? So, because you got $40,000 worth of shares in your pocket, right?
Right.
Now, would I want to pay those pay those taxes? No one wants to.
Right.
We could have the best intentions. We could be the best team. We could do everything right, but where's the guarantee that we'll be successful?
Right.
Right. There's no guarantee that it will be successful. So, what happens? Let's say I got $40,000 worth of shares, and I say, you know what, I'm going to pay tax on it. I end up paying taxes on the company. A year or two later, the company doesn't get anywhere. The company gets dissolved, right? So what has happened? I paid taxes on shares which didn't get me anything in return. Will the IRS refund me those taxes? No way.
No. Right.
So no one wants to pay taxes on the shares of a startup. Hence the concept of options come in. Now the option, as opposed to shares where you give restricted stock and become a shareholder of a company, the option is the right to buy shares. It's an option to buy shares in the company. You can exercise the option, buy shares, and then become a shareholder. But until you do that, you're only an optionee. You're not a shareholder in the company. Now, if the option is issued at a fair market value, so for example, in my example, you tell me, Azad, you were getting 40% shares in the company, and your exercise price is $40,000. Meaning, whenever I exercise, whenever they vest and I exercise, I will have to write a check for $40,000 and then get the shares. Meaning, what I've done is I've essentially told the company that whatever is the value of the shares today is what I'm going to pay for these shares later on, as in when I want to exercise them.
Right.
So that's the reason why options are issuing options is tax free. So there's no tax on when you issue an option and the option is issued at fair market value. There's no tax on that.
Because nothing is really changing hands. You're really just signing a legal contract. That's it.
Absolutely. You basically put no value in my pocket on day one.
Got it. Okay.
Right. So that's the reason why it's so
very interesting.
To go back to your point, if the company has you and I start working together, we issued shares to each other right from day one. Another person joins us a year later, he could be getting options.
Right.
But there are certain, like I said, there are tax consequences when these shares or options are issued, but there are also tax consequences when later on if the company is successful.
When they're exercised, right?
When there's an exit, right? I mean, if you held those shares for 2 years, then you get long-term capital gains. If you exercise the option right before the company is getting acquired, then you haven't held them for 2 years and you have different tax consequences.
Yep.
So those are things that you have to keep in mind.
Really interesting. Okay. One thing I do want to jump back to is the vesting schedule that you sort of touched on, and I just want to make sure we clarify that a little bit for the people in our audience. This is essentially vesting schedule is essentially a way to tie the co-founder or whoever your sort of partner is to the company for a longer term.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
And tell me how it normally works. I understand there's a cliff and there's several years. So walk me through that.
Yes. So depending on whether you're giving common stock or whether you're giving options, right? The vesting works differently. So let's talk about a common stock. So if the company is issuing common stock subject to vesting, then a typical vesting schedule is very standard vesting schedule is, and you may have come across this term, is 4 years, 1 year cliff. So basically what you're telling the person who's getting the shares is then, Azad, you're getting 40% of the company, but this 40% you will earn over the next 4 years.
Yep.
Okay. So one could say, okay, I'm earning 10% each year, right? But that cliff comes in and essentially what you're telling me is, Azad, you have to at least work with me for 1 year so to vest your first 10%. So after you work with me for 12 months, your 10% will vest and the remaining 30% will then vest over the remaining 36 months on a monthly basis. So then you don't need to have an annual cliff, meaning, if I work with you for 12 months, I get my 10%. If I work with you for 18 months, then I get my 10%. Plus then I get also the vesting for the 6 months after the first year that I worked with you. So that's the vesting, and that is the same, whether you have an option or you have stock, the vesting schedule works the same way. Now the difference where the difference is the fact that in an option, like I said, you're not issuing shares, you're issuing the right to buy shares. So as the option vests, I have the right to buy the shares that have vested.
Right.
In my first example, I was given 40% of the company on day one, and I was told the company has the right to buy back the unvested shares. That's the difference. In an option, I am basically being told, Azad, here's an option. You can buy up to 40%, but you have to stay with the company for 4 years to buy the entire 40%, right? If you leave earlier, then you can still buy whatever is vested.
Right.
But like I said, I have to go through these steps. One, something should have vested. Second, I should then have to buy them, exercise my option, write a check to the company.
Right.
So that's the difference between the two concepts.